You know, if you just looked at the official press releases from the 52nd G7 summit in France, you'd totally miss the real story. Because behind the forced smiles, the perfectly staged group photos, and all those pristine diplomatic backdrops, there was actually an intense, high-stakes geopolitical game playing out. We're talking leaked secrets, bizarre ultimatums, serious mind games, and a massive shift in global power dynamics. So pull up a chair, because in this explainer, we're going to peel back the curtain and really focus on the true narration of the hidden drama at the G7 summit. Let me ask you this. Why did the highly anticipated meeting between Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi and US President Donald Trump start off with such a cold shoulder? I mean, when these two finally met face-to-face after 16 months apart, everybody was expecting their usual highly publicized camaraderie, right? But instead, absolute frost. There was absolutely no famous bear hug. During the group photo, there was this glaring lack of eye contact. And when they actually did interact, it was just this strictly formal, stiff handshake. So what exactly caused this incredibly visible restraint between two famously close leaders?
Part 1. Tension at the summit.
Well, the first major shockwave actually came in the form of a title. Since 2018, the U.S. military's largest command was named the U.S. Indo-Pacific Command. And that's a title that really recognized India's vital importance in that region. But get this, right before this summit, literally hours before their bilateral meeting, the U.S. Department of War abruptly changed it back to its old name, the U.S. Pacific Command. They literally stripped the word Indo right out of it. Now, officials claimed it was just to honor historical legacy, but seasoned diplomats, they saw it for what it was, a sudden, highly symbolic downgrading of India's importance by the U.S. administration.
And it wasn't just the name change either. Over on the official U.S. Command website, they suddenly displayed a map showing Pakistan-occupied Kashmir as part of Pakistan. That is a massive provocation. On top of that, Trump had recently launched these verbal attacks, calling India a dead economy and labeling Delhi a hellhole. Then, add in the severe new hurdles for H-1B visas, which caused absolute chaos for thousands of Indian IT professionals and students. Oh, and General Electric suddenly heavily delaying the supply of vital jet engines for India's Tejas Mk-1A fighter jets. This was a rapidly escalating coordinated campaign of mind games targeting New Delhi.
But perhaps the most severe breaking point happened just a week prior to the summit. 3 Indian seafarers were tragically killed in a U.S. military strike near the Oman coast. And this deeply, deeply angered India. In fact, before Modi even packed his bags for the summit, officials in New Delhi summoned the U.S. ambassador to deliver a stern, furious warning. So the atmosphere heading into this wasn't just cold, it was highly volatile.
Part 2. Reversing the friction.
Yes, you read that right. So in front of all the other world leaders during Tuesday's working lunch, Trump executed a complete 180-degree turn. The coldness? Totally vanished. It was replaced by this avalanche of highly specific praise. He actually told the room, pointing right at Modi, he is the most beautiful-looking man, and even compared him to an angel. But then he drops the punchline. He says, unlike me, who is calm, he is a total killer. It was a classic Trump moment, drawing a bunch of laughs from the room, but geopolitically, it publicly signaled the end of the hostilities.
During this suddenly warmed-up exchange, Trump fondly reminisced about his 2020 visit to India. He specifically boasted about the Motera Stadium event, the one where there were 150,000 people inside and another 250,000 waiting outside. But here is where things get truly bizarre. When they started discussing defense, Trump firmly grabbed Modi's hand and promised that, even without an official treaty, if anyone attacked India, the U.S. would be there to defend them. To catch, he explicitly stated this assurance only exists as long as Modi himself remains the leader. If a new leader comes in, Trump literally said all bets are off. It's this highly personalized, genuinely confusing logic to attach to international defense strategy, but it really underscored their unique dynamic.
Part 3. Historic economic pacts.
Meanwhile, behind the scenes, New Delhi secured an absolute massive victory, $20.5 billion. That is the massive, planned American investment flowing right into India's tech, manufacturing, and pharma sectors that emerged as they agreed to speed up U.S.-India trade deals. That's a huge win.
And the momentum didn't stop there. Seriously, mark this date on your calendar. Following talks with UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer, a historic announcement was made. The India-UK Comprehensive Economic and Trade Agreement is officially set to be implemented on July 15, 2026.
Oh, and we're still going. The momentum continued right along with Canada, because despite 2 years of severe diplomatic rows, Modi and Canadian PM Justin Trudeau actually expressed satisfaction with their talks on a comprehensive economic partnership agreement. That's a massive trade pact targeting a 2026 completion. Furthermore, after discussions with EU leader Ursula von der Leyen, an India-EU free trade deal is also now targeted for the end of 2026. This was India's proactive, interest-driven diplomacy firing on absolutely all cylinders.
Part 4. The G7 Paradox.
Now, let's zoom out for a second. In the 1980s, the G7 controlled a staggering 70% of the world's nominal GDP. Back then, they were the undisputed titans of the global economy. But today, that share has plummeted to just 43%. Their absolute economic dominance is fading fast, and that is largely due to the rapid rise of the BRICS nations. Furthermore, the actual legitimacy of the G7 is increasingly being questioned by the developing world. Think about this. The G7 represents only 10% of the global population, yet they are responsible for 59% of historical CO2 emissions. Today, they emit twice as much carbon as the entire African continent. Yet, they continually try to dictate strict climate rules and trade barriers to developing nations. And India? Well, India actually uses its presence at the summit to openly call out these glaring double standards.
So you might be wondering, if they're losing dominance, why do they need India at the table so badly? Simply put, China. The G7 is terrified of China's expanding military and economic influence in the Indo-Pacific. And India is the only nation with the sheer size, the military capacity, and the democratic system to act as a realistic counterweight. Through the China Plus One strategy, which is basically the West's desperate scramble to diversify supply chains away from Beijing, they really need India as a manufacturing alternative. You simply cannot ignore a 1.4 billion consumer market with a booming digital economy. But what's even more impressive is how India maintains absolute strategic autonomy. They masterfully sit at the table with the G7 while simultaneously acting as an active leader in rival blocs like BRICS and the SCO. Quite frankly, they need India far more than India needs them.
Part 5. Championing the Global South.
Because of this incredibly indispensable status, India isn't just showing up to listen. They are attending to lead. PM Modi brought a brilliant reality check to the outreach session. He highlighted a massive demographic crisis. The developed nations of the G7 are really struggling with rapidly aging societies and a shortage of resources. Or, as Modi pointedly corrected, a shortage of trust. In stark contrast, India and the broader Global South possess an absolute abundance of vibrant, young talent and critical skills. So to bridge this massive gap, PM Modi laid out some really clear, actionable proposals. First up, they proposed a global skills partnership to promote reliable skill mapping and mobility. And second, something called the IMPACT Framework. That stands for International Mobilization Partnership for Accelerating Connectivity and Trade. And the concept here is actually brilliant. It basically says, let's combine the deep pockets and funds of the G7 with the immense talent pool of India to accelerate critical infrastructure projects in places like Africa and Latin America.
Part 6. AI Warnings and Summit Secrets.
Okay, so beyond all the public speeches and the big trade deals, the real future-shaping decisions always happen behind closed doors. And leading tech CEOs were actually present at these private sessions. For instance, Sam Altman, the CEO of OpenAI, delivered a super stark warning. He was practically begging governments to not leave AI safety solely to the tech labs. He urged leaders to establish global, government-led standards, especially focusing on making conversational AI chatbots safe for kids. Meanwhile, on the health front, the G7 quietly committed a massive $1 billion to prepare for future Ebola outbreaks in Africa. Geopolitically, they set a hard, concrete target to aggressively drop their dependency on China for critical tech minerals to below 60% by 2030. And finally, they initiated a strict new action plan aimed at dismantling the organized criminal networks that are profiting from migrant smuggling.
But come on. It wouldn't be a true G7 summit without a little leaked hot mic drama, right? So during this highly serious, super tense discussion on the final day regarding Chinese subsidies, Donald Trump arrived late. He just strolled right into the room, looked around at all the world leaders waiting for him, and confidently interrupted with, "I am the boss." I mean, the sheer audacity of it completely broke the tension, and the entire room erupted into laughter. It's just a great little reminder that behind all the grand global strategy, these are still just big personalities managing complex mind games.
At the end of the day, global politics isn't just about official press releases. It's about leverage, it's about timing, and it's all about strategic autonomy. Watching a nation that isn't even an official member sit right beside superpowers, call out their double standards, and actually compel them to agree to their terms, that is a profound shift in history. So as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with this thought. As the old world order fractures and power divides, what defining role will India play as the ultimate balancing force between the G7, the G20, and BRICS in the years to come? The whole game is changing out there, and we'll be right here to keep explaining it to you.